I wanted to talk about something that I've been doing in role-playing games recently, in games that I've been running, but also something that I think many GMs find themselves in the situation of running this particular scenario. And it is one that requires a fair bit of deep thought, and that is running cities. Running cities is a particularly difficult challenge in fantasy role-playing games and role-playing games in general. And the reason why that running cities is hard is that there are so many variables, that there's so many different places you can go. There's usually not anything in the way of you making those choices. It's not like a dungeon where there's only so many paths, there's only so many nodes, there's only so many ways to go there. Or even if you think about like traveling in the overlands, there's really only so many paths that you're going to take in the overlands. There's not really, sure, you could take, an infinite number of paths through the woods, but really there's only going to be like 2 or 3. And as a GM, you could say like, well, you can follow the stream, which is a little bit wild, but probably not so bad. You could go directly through the forest just looking for game trails and stuff, which is definitely wild. Or you could take the old road, and which is more well known. You'll be observed and spotted, and there's bandits there, but you might be able to take that. You can still offer these sort of branches of choices in overland that still are limited in how they go. Many times it's just one path. You're like, yeah, you're going to go on the main road. That's going to be it. But cities can go anywhere, and the characters can go anywhere. They can split up and go in multiple directions. There's so many things to do. There's so many options available that when you run a city, it can be paralyzing both for GMs who are running it and for the players who are deciding where to go. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have any outstanding, simple, straightforward, lazy GM advice that says this is how you should run a city, and if you run it this way, it's going to be super easy and you're ready to go. I don't have advice like that. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of ideas. I have things that I've been working with that have made it better, but nothing that I have found have made it just easy to run a city. One of the things that I've been hanging on to a lot, which I think you can do in pretty much all aspects of your game, it's the reason why it is step 1 of the 8 steps of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, is focusing on the characters. Think about the characters. Look at the characters. Understand what they want. Think about what their players want. Think about what the background of those characters are like. Think about what the character arcs are. What kind of things are they trying to accomplish? There's lots of ways to ask this. You can ask it during your session 0. You can use like campfire tales where you ask the players to describe what their characters are thinking about the future or the past. You can just ask players directly with something like Stars and Wishes. What are the things that you'd like to see happen in the game? What are the things that you've really enjoyed that have been happening in the game? And you can write all that stuff down, and you can use that to flesh out your whole game. You can use it to flesh out specific adventures. You can think about your bigger campaign. You can think about all of that, but you can also use that to help design how you're going to approach a city. And the idea is when you're sitting down and you say, okay, the characters are about to enter a city. Maybe it's like Waterdeep. We could go with like a really big city like Waterdeep, or a really big city like Sharn, or maybe a smaller to medium-sized city like Zobek from Midgard, or maybe even a smaller city like Dulwich from Shadowed Keep of the Borderlands. And you look at these and you say, okay, well, you're not going to say like, well, let me tell you about Waterdeep. It's got 12 districts. It's got 1.5 million people. There's docks and there's rich people and there's all this stuff. You probably don't want to like describe the whole thing. Instead, you want to make a reason like, why are they at the city? What are they hoping to do there? What are the plots that are driving them there? But then also, when you look at the characters, where do you think the characters are going to want to go? What are the things you think each character is going to want to do? And if you sit down when you're doing your game prep and you know you're either going to be going to a city or you're in a city, you can list all your characters out and look at each one and say, what place do I think this character is going to go? My wizard is going to want to go to a wizard school because they want to research new spells, or they want to go to an old sage and they want to learn more information about magic, but they want to research spells. My cleric or my paladin, they're going to want to go find their temples. They're going to want to go talk to people about, whatever the big threats are of the world. They're going to want to go, maybe they have an old mentor in town. What are the specific places that they want to go? Your rogue is going to go find like the shady areas, maybe go in the back alleys, talking to people. Maybe if they have like an old thieves guild there that they know about. And again, that could be a secret and clue. Is that your secret and clue is that there's a thieves guild that the rogue knows about? You can go down your list of characters. Your barbarian, wants to go. I mean, what's like a good place for the barbarians to go? Maybe there's like an old veterans hangout that the barbarian knows about, or maybe that like it's actually outside of the city is where the barbarian enclave hangs out, or maybe there's like an area where they do contests and feats of strength that he might be interested in, or a warriors guild. Fighters and barbarians might go to a warriors guild. Think about each of the characters, think about what they want, and think about what kind of place you can highlight in the city that they're going to want to go to. The nice thing about that is you're aiming it directly at a character. So if you even mention that there's a place like that, they're probably going to say, oh yeah, I want to go there, because they know they're in their character. They know where they want to go. And you're not just thinking about it from like what classes they would have. You're thinking about it from like the drive of the character themselves and the interest of the players. You know, you might have a player who's just always interested in learning what magic items are available for sale. So say, oh yeah, there's a shady magic item vendor. He always has 3 items for sale, but it's never the same 3 items. And they're always like sold to you, but it's always at a weird cost, right? So you can drop that in and say, okay, here's this one NPC that the characters know about that they can go and they can learn about what magic items are available, and you can figure that out. And you can spend a little time prepping that out because you know that one player is going to want to go see what magic items are available. So that's probably my biggest tip, is build the city and focus your attention on the city around the characters and the things that they're going to want to do. But then there's also another part about it, which is focusing it around the adventures that they're going on. What are the stories that are happening? What are the drives that are bringing them there? What options do they have? If you have a limited number of like quests that they're going on that are in that city, then you don't really have to worry that they're going to do a lot of other things because those quests are going on. If you don't have quests, you want to drop quests in front of them, right? Have a distraught man run up to them and say, my idiot adventuring son grabbed his sword and went down into the sewers. You look like adventurers. Could you please go down into the sewers and help my son? Now, granted, you're going to go straight from a city down into a dungeon, but you could drop stuff like that in there. You could have you have 2 people talking about, hey, have you heard about it? Yeah, I heard another kid got lost in the sewers the other day. And you're dropping a little adventuring seed in front of them. You know, you could have these and drop like 3 interesting adventuring seeds. So that way you are helping to steer their direction in specific areas that you can then worry about and prep. Instead of saying like, here's this great big city, where do you want to go? Which is the kiss of death for running a city. If you say you enter the Waterdeep, you look around and realize like, here's a city of 1 million people, 12 districts, everybody from like super rich people up on the hill to the docks down below, you know, where do you want to go? Oh my God, right? Like they don't know and you don't know, and they're going to come up with something and you won't have any idea what you want to do there. So that is really avoid that, right? You want to have clear drive, clear direction, clear motivation, clear reasons why they're going to the city, clear, not railroading. You're not saying there's only one path. You're just going straight to the Duke and you're asking for that gold that you got for killing the wyvern out back. You don't want to have just one path, but you don't want to offer like an infinite number of paths. You want like 3 to 5. Again, that option of like, you know, having one option available per character is probably enough. And even that's going to be a lot. But dropping like, what are the main hooks that are driving you into the city, and focusing on those hooks can be a really good angle. Keep those choices limited. Now, a lot of times you're going to be running downtime in these cities. A lot of the reasons why you go to these cities is that they can spend a little time there. It's safe. They can actually take a long rest without, getting accosted by giant rats, most likely, depending on the bar that they pick. And so they're going to want to do stuff. And some of those stuff might take longer than like a day. So this is your opportunity to do downtime. Now, the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook both have downtime activities. Xanathar's Guide also has downtime activities for like your D&D 5e games. Other books have other downtime activities. Level Up Advanced 5e has their downtime activities. It's good to take a look at those to get an idea of the kind of things that you can do. But one of the things you can do is customize your downtime activities for the characters. Again, if you get anything from this, you're going to get this one message: focus on the characters, right? And you can focus on the characters. Probably might be, one of the biggest, most important things you can do in any RPGs. Focus on the characters. They're the focal point. They're what you're doing. What are they doing? Be fans of them. Design your adventures around what they're doing. It's a point for Spiral campaign development. It's step 1 from the Lazy DM tips, and we're talking about it here. And when you're designing your downtime, so when you're thinking about downtime and you think about the things that they might want to do, think about the things that characters might want to do specifically. So instead of saying like, oh, you have all of these different options of things you want to do, say like, well, which characters, the bard is probably going to want to do some carousing. So you can kind of customize the carousing one around the bard and what they want to do. Again, if you have somebody that's really interested in scribing magic or understanding spells or learning about ancient lore or uncovering secrets of artifacts that they'd already picked up, you could have sort of your whole like magical archaeology downtime activity. Again, kind of reconnecting with the clergy, reconnecting with priests of your god, relearning about like how we've been chasing this threat, but we've been out in the field all this time. How do the gods feel about this threat? Like that could be a particular downtime activity. So look at each of the characters and custom build your downtime activities and your options for downtime activities around those characters so that they are tailor-made for them. And that way there's not a million different options. There's really only a set of options, but those options are things they're really going to be want to be interested in. They're really going to be interested in them. If you really think about this, taking those base ideas as templates, right? The downtime activities you find from other books you can use as templates, but then you can tailor them around things that the characters can want to do. I think that I have done that. I found it to be a pretty valuable idea. Another one is like, your strong starts, right? Step 2 from Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is run a strong start. When you're just starting off your session, have something happen, right? Have an event that occurs and use that event to drive them towards your adventure. I'll bring up an example that I used from my game just last night. They're in the town of Dulwich. Dulwich is a pretty good sized town. This is from Shadowed Keep on the Borderlands. The town of Dulwich is a pretty big town. And I knew that I had an idea about where I wanted the adventure to go. I was a little risky because they're starting in a town, which means I could have players who say, oh, actually, I'd like to go do this thing. And I did a little bit. I had one player who's like, hey, I'd like to go to that temple again and just ask the woman that runs the temple about this thing, or the big cathedral. I want to ask her about this thing. But it was okay, because one of the things I did is I could have done any sort of random strong start. I could have had a couple, like the last session, I had a couple of thugs that were bugging a potion vendor. And then while the characters walking by, they saw these thugs that were extorting money from the potion vendor. It was just a nice situation for them to get a feeling for the town. And it had an intention, which was to introduce the characters to the gangs that operate inside Dulwich through a specific instance. That worked really well. If I did that again, though, now I'm going to draw the characters away from the story that I actually wanted to head towards, which is the story they said they wanted to head towards last session, but it's been a couple weeks. It's been a while since we played, so they might not remember. So instead, my strong start was that one of the characters had a vision and a nightmare about a terrible ritual occurring on this hill where an obelisk grew out of the ground and killed a sacrifice while it grew out of the ground. And then when the character came to, subconsciously they had drawn a map to where that obelisk was. And all the other characters kind of saw what happened and said, oh my God, like in your sleep, you drew a map to a place. We should probably go there and see what happened. And then there was some investigation. Did that already occur? Is this something we could stop? What happened? And they did some more thought. But right away, the strong start, even though they're in this big town with all these options, the strong starts told them what to do, gave them the impression, gave them direction, gave them the thing, drew the characters in, because one of the characters is the one who had this vision. They still got to do all this other investigation, but they knew the event of the strong start shoved them in that direction that they went. And again, was I railroading then? Yes. Only because they selected that option last game. Last game they said, oh, we want to investigate those creepy monoliths. Okay, you want to investigate the creepy monoliths? I'm holding you to it, and I'm going to hammer that point down in the strong start. So even though they're in the city with so many things to do, there was a specific strong start that guided them down the direction that we wanted the adventure to go. That they wanted the adventure to go because they selected it. So in the same way, we can drop adventure hooks in front of the characters right away, that while they're going around the city, instead of just having them wander aimlessly, if we have certain ideas about where we want the characters to go, we can drop those hooks in. You don't want a lot of them. You don't want 6 hooks. You want like 3. If you don't know where the adventure is going to go, you want like 3. If you know where the adventure is going to go, get rid of the other ones and focus on that one, like I did last night. I knew they wanted to go after the monoliths. They said they wanted to go after the monoliths. They mentioned it to me in the previous session. I double checked with them between the game. Hey, everybody, just to remember, you guys said you wanted to head out and investigate the monoliths, right? And they said, yeah, that's what we want. And I'm like, monoliths it is. And we focused on it. I even had players who were like joking, like, oh, we changed our mind. We don't want to go to the monoliths. They knew, right? They knew I was asking. I'm like, well, I just spent an hour prepping your whole exploration of monoliths, and that's where we're going, right? So am I railroading them now? Yes, but they chose it. Same way, drop adventure hooks that are areas you actually want the characters to go. 3 is always a good option. 3 different ways. Oh, do you want to go in the sewers because you heard people are disappearing in the sewers? That's an adventuring hook. Do you want to go meet the gang that threatened you, actually invited you to come meet with them? Do you want to go meet the gang member and learn what they have to say? Like face off against the gang folk who said, hey, come to the Golden Skull and we'll meet you here. We have an offer for you. Well, that's interesting. Or do you want to investigate why people are being animated from the dead in the cemetery outside of the church, right? right? So you offer these adventuring hooks right away. And even though the city's really big with in the case of Dulwich, it's like 16 locations. In the case of Waterdeep, I think it's like 1,000, right? But you could still say when you're in a city like Waterdeep, there's still only certain ways you want to go. You can meet, Blackstaff wants to meet you. Very rarely does Blackstaff meet with anybody, but she offered an invitation to you saying that she wanted to talk to you about this recent event that's occurred. Plus this other thing has happened and this other thing has happened. And you can have them in different parts of the city. You can describe what's going on as they're going through those parts of the city, but you want to have those adventuring hooks. So that really works. A very common solution to the mega city, which is like your Sharn and your Waterdeep, are like examples of like mega cities that are really big, is they break them up into districts. And it can be good if you have control over your adventure, you can make sure that the adventures that you're running are contained to 1 or 2 districts, that you don't have to explain every district in all of Sharn or all of Waterdeep in order to run a single adventure. Instead, you say, no, it's actually going to be local, in which case you're shrinking it down to just sort of a local location. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't, because you're still going to be crossing over from one district. It really makes sense that an adventure is taking place in another district, but you can still kind of say, okay, well, now we're still focusing on 2. And you might mention like you traveled through these 2 other districts in order to get to these 2. But as far as those districts are concerned, you only really need to describe those particular districts. So that can work. And something else you can do is like have a notable landmark in each district to kind of remind them what this district is like. What is it about the docks that makes it really interesting and really grabs your attention? What is it about like the upper rich people's places? What is the fountain that they have that makes that place look so unique? Think about like what interesting monument each of the districts has to help reinforce in the minds of the players which district they're in. And oh yeah, that was the one that had the giant hand. I'm pulling it from my own book from Fantastic Locations. Oh, is this the town that's got the giant hand sticking out of it? Or is this the one where the statue had collapsed and is now sitting upon a building and there's still people living in those buildings, even though it's now the chair of this giant statue? Those monuments can really help, but focusing on those districts can really work. Now, a tricky bit, and again, this just gets to the point that, like, again, point number 1, cities are hard. Cities are hard. There's really no great answer, in my opinion, to make running cities really straightforward and easy. Absorb as much of the city as you can. Take the time. Read about it. If you're going to be running a significant amount of your adventures in a city like Zobek in Midgard, pick up the Zobek guide and go read it and go understand the history of the city and understand the districts that are there and understand the people there. You don't have to memorize all of it, but the more of it you put into your mind, the more notes you kind of jot down, the more adventure ideas you get from the hooks, the easier it's going to be for you to run that city. Same with like Waterdeep, same with Sharn, and it's interesting. Like this is the kind of research, reading our source material is a good lazy DM technique. It's not easy, but we get a lot of value from it for the time that we spend. If you're going to be running an adventure in Sharn, I ran a 1st to 7th level, half of a campaign, about 1st to 7th level in Sharn. It helped me considerably to learn more about Sharn. I know I didn't get it all right. I know I didn't show off every part of the city, but I was able to make Sharn alive enough and make it different enough that the players recognized it, the players enjoyed it, and things worked out well. So this is one of those areas where you're just going to have to do a little bit of homework. And if you're running a big city, you're going to want to read about that big city. You're going to want to understand that big city about as much as you can. That doesn't mean finding every single book that's ever been written about Waterdeep. Right? There's like, I don't know how many source books have been written about Waterdeep over the years, but it's a lot. But Waterdeep Dragon Heist, like that adventure alone has a good gazetteer about Waterdeep. Read the gazetteer. The gazetteer is probably enough to work out. The same with like Baldur's Gate. There's a gazetteer for Baldur's Gate and Descent into Avernus. If you're running Baldur's Gate and you read that part of it, that can work really well. Sharn inside of Eberron, Rising from the Last War, right? And an excellent guide to Sharn. You can read that. Again, Kobold Press has the Zobek source book. You can read all about Zobek from that book. The books like the Southlands that Midgard, that Kobold Press has published, the Southlands has multiple cities. It's worth like, hey, per Bastet, the City of Cats, if we're going to spend time in the City of Cats, spend the time to read about the City of Cats. Get enough details that you can really make it feel alive. Make it really alive live for your characters. So there's lots of good different guides for cities. There's actually Kobold Press put out a guide called Cities and Towns. I'll link to that. Gives you an idea about, that's mostly for you to build your own city, more so than how to run published cities that exist. But there's also lots of published cities. Zobek, the guide to Zobek is really, really good. But one of the accessories that for years, in my opinion, has been one of the best accessories for running cities is Waterdeep City Encounters. This is a DM's Guild product. It was Will Doyle kind of put it together, but a whole bunch of luminaries, a whole bunch of excellent designers in the TTRPG and the 5e D&D space wrote this book. It's available on the DM's Guild. You can get the PDF and softcover for $15, and it is definitely worthwhile. And one of the things that book is piled with is city encounters. When the characters are going from place to place, you can roll on this list and you get these really fun 1 or 2 sentence descriptions of something that happens in the city. Other city source books have things like this too, but this book alone, because it's got so many different ones, is a really, really valuable aid. Something I really, really like. City Encounters is excellent. You can, and it's built for Waterdeep, but you can definitely use these same encounters in your other games. You might have to tailor 1 or 2 of them that have sort of Waterdeep focused things in them, but generally speaking, these city encounters can be dropped into any of your games. It's a really, really excellent product for a really good price. It's an adamantine bestseller. It's which is their best-selling category on DriveThruRPG and the DM's Guild. Again, $15 for the PDF and softcover. Really, really worth it. I used it when I was running Waterdeep Dragon Heist. I loved it. I had the copy that was just beat to hell. It was all scraped up because I took it to the game shop with me, and I would mangle it up when I'm looking for encounters. And I love it. It's a fantastic book. So you're going to want to check that one out. So that is really all I currently have to say about cities. It is an evolving topic. I'm sure that I will come up with new ways. Maybe people have better tools. If you have tips and tricks that you have found for running cities where you're like, everyone else is an idiot for not doing it this way, because this is a really, really straightforward and easy way to run a city, that it makes it really fits the lazy DM style of high value prep activities, like the kind of prep activities that you can do that offer really high value. Please tell me. Send me an email, put a comment, whatever you need to do. Reach out to me, come to the Discord server, the Sly Flourish Discord server for patrons, and talk about what you have found to be good ways to run cities. I hope you enjoyed this show. If you did and you want more stuff like this, please subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. Doing so is absolutely free. You will get a free RPG-related email sent directly to your inbox, plus a free adventure generator PDF. You can also become a patron of Sly Flourish and get access to the monthly Q&A, a dedicated Discord server, Uncovered Secrets Volume 1 and 2, the City of Arches sourcebook, a bunch of exclusive adventures, and a whole lot more. And you can pick up any of my books, including Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master, The Lazy DM's Companion, and The Lazy DM's Workbook, all at the Sly Flourish bookstore. Links to all of that are in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.